Next, Governor Rauner and several lawmakers discuss education reform. This runs about 30 minutes.
So it's wonderful to be with you all today to discuss something that's been very important to our administration since we were first sworn in. From the very beginning, Governor Bruce Rauner saw that there was a problem. We have the most units of government than any other state in the union. We have almost 7,000 units of government. We have more than Texas. So that was problem number one. Problem number two that we saw firsthand is our property tax rate. Well, we're number two in the nation as far as high property tax rates. So he developed a task force, and I was lucky enough to be the chairman of this task force. Now, we took a look at who would serve on this task force. We were comprised about 24 people from all units of government, all walks of life, both Democrats and Republicans, representatives, senators, and even our own Dr. Darlene Rossetti. And we had this task force put together, and then we also collaborated with a third party to crunch some numbers for us, some statistics, and that was through Northern Illinois University. Throughout the course of the year, we had 16 meetings all over Illinois, and we took note of what was ailing communities. But we were also speaking to school districts, and we heard the testimony of the parents. We heard the testimony of leaders, and a lot of times we heard that there were the problems in school districts as far as contracting and driver's ed, and the fact that they wanted to get out of certain unfunded mandates. Now, a lot of people, our study also considered consolidation and unfunded mandates. For those of you who don't know what unfunded mandates are, it's when big government tells little government what to do, but they don't give you the money in which to effectuate these new roles. So with that, and with this study, we came out with 27 proposals. And today you will see life in one of these proposals as they pertain to our schools. So with that, you know, this whole task force report has been the objective of giving the power back to our teachers, giving the power back to the children in the schools so that you folks could determine what's best for you in your districts. So with that, I'd like to introduce someone who's a very dear friend and neighbor, Representative Ron Sandak.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Good morning. It's still the morning, right? Good morning, everyone. You'll notice I dress like the governor when I know the governor's in town. Not dumb. Anyway, Lieutenant Governor said it exactly right. So I'm here to talk a little bit about House Bill 6164. My colleague Jason Berrickman will talk about the Senate bill, which is reciprocal. And the idea here is giving power to school boards, superintendents, principals, teachers, parents, the true stakeholders of the education and the educational path of students. And you wouldn't think this is really difficult and hard. We have in Springfield put impediments upon our local units of government, well-intended all, but unintended consequences have occurred. For those that were part of the question and answer with the governor, we heard some really amazing students ask some phenomenal questions. Frankly, we could use some of those folks. I think my colleagues would admit that some of those questions were better than we sometimes hear in the daily course of our conduct. It is. 6164 and the Senate equivalent intends in three components. I'm going to talk about two. Jason will talk about one, to make life easier for school boards, principals, superintendents, teachers, and parents. So it does two things. I'm talking about PE and driver's ed. PE is important. Everyone knows the difference between physical education and physical activity, no doubt about it. But in Illinois, we've made it onerous, and we've made impediments upon graduation, requiring everyday physical education to the detriment, frankly, of teachers' ability to offer AP classes. We just saw what AP classes can do. Vocational training, computer training, student flexibility. The requirement of PE, everyday PE, has caused scheduling problems and made life difficult for students and their parents. Our bill simply says that the school board can make a decision to waive PE requirements when a student is an athlete or engages in physical activity and education outside her or his curriculum environment, and set a policy so that some flexibility and some control at the local level can occur. So too with driver's ed. Everyone knows how important it is. As a note, my son got his driver's license yesterday. For those of you in Downers Grove, beware. But look, that is something that can be third-party contract out if a school district wants to do that. Right now, it requires that the benefit package of any third-party contractor equal or be similar to that which teachers have. Teachers are different, and deserve the benefits they have. Driver's ed is important, but that is something, frankly, that can be done outside the confines of the school, or it can be brought into the school environment, giving the school board, teachers, principals, flexibility, again, to focus more on core curriculum, STEM curriculum, and have, frankly, that be the driver, pun intended, of educational opportunities going forward. I'm going to let the third leg of this journey be brought to you by Senator Barackman, who will talk about the bill from the Senate side.
Thanks, Ron. My name is Jason Barackman. I am in the state Senate from Bloomington, well south of DuPage County, but glad to be here today and be a part of the today's presentation, to hear from these students today, which always gives me a charge to listen to the bright minds that are the future of our state. So I'm glad to be here, and one of the things that I notice is I travel the state. My wife is from the suburbs. I'm a guy who grew up downstate. We live in Bloomington today. Everywhere I go around this state, as I listen to the education community, they tell me one thing consistently, which is the state needs to get off our back. Year after year, we talk to our superintendents and our school board members, and what do we hear? We hear that the state of Illinois is requiring schools to do more, but giving them less. And just now we heard from the governor next door talk about his proposal to spend more money on schools, a proposal I adamantly support, something that's very necessary. But the other leg of this that we can do as a state is give our school districts the flexibility that they need so that they can create their own path and their own destiny. That's what this legislation does. I've filed Senate Bill 3098. Again, like Representative Sandick, this is the corresponding bill in the Senate. And this allows us to have this critical discussion about the mandate relief that is necessary for our school districts around the state. Today, there's countless mandates on nearly every aspect of the operation of every school district in this state. And we need to lift some of those, give the flexibility that our school districts need. The component, third-party contracting, Superintendent Larson talked about it. Giving our school districts the flexibility to make the best choices that they can make based on their local needs for services that are needed at the school system. Non-instructional services, we're talking about janitors, we're talking about security, we're talking about buses and maintenance. The activities that the school districts can choose locally to obtain service from others who can provide that, possibly in a more efficient way than exists today. We need to remove the rules that tie the hands of our schools all around this state. This relief to me is necessary. It gives our districts the flexibility they need. It allows them to direct their limited resources in the ways that they choose best, which we all know means more dollars in the classroom, which is a goal that we all ought to aspire to. So with that, I want to turn it over to one of your own, Representative Breen.
I welcome you to the Lilac Village. You are at one of our crowning gems for people from Lombard and the surrounding communities. And I'm proud to represent most or all of District 87, so the fine high school district that you're here with. I'm the new guy here. I know Evelyn because I knocked on her door, because I'm proud to represent her and her husband Ray and their family in the General Assembly. And so when I got into the legislature, the first thing I did was talk to Darlene Rossetti about, hey, Darlene, what do we need to do to fix education in our state? And one of the constant refrains is get the state mandates lifted. And we know full well, anyone who lives in DuPage County, I'm a DuPage County public school graduate. You look at the public schools throughout our county, they are excellent. But we are paying a crushing burden of property taxes to support those schools. Folks are moving out of our county, and they're moving to other states, as the governor had alluded to earlier, and they can't take it anymore. Lombard is a blue-collar, working-class, and a little bit of white-collar community, and we can't take this burden. So you've got to lift these mandates, and I'm so glad today that we've got these bills coming forward from Representative Sandak and Senator Barackman, and many other ideas as well. And I'm always glad to welcome our governor. Thank you so much for coming to Lombard. Now, I was the local introduction. Now the Elmhurst introduction of the governor will come from Senator Chris Nybo. So.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Nybo. I'm the other representative. I'm a senator who represents this area. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to welcome you all here. Lieutenant Governor Sanguinetti, Governor Rauner, really appreciate you guys choosing Lombard, District 87, and Glenbard East to make this announcement. I think we saw this morning, we are so proud of our schools here in DuPage County. Superintendent Larson, everybody with Glenbard East and with District 87 who is part of this program this morning, thank you. You guys inspire people like me and people like Representative Breen and Representative Sandek and Senator Berrickman and the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor to do the best that we can to help you. So you're a great testament to the schools that we have here in DuPage County. We're very proud that you're able to support this effort. And I think we saw earlier this week that Governor Rauner has made education one of the top, if not the top priorities. And usually in school settings, the letter F is not good. You want to avoid Fs. But I think today we're seeing that there's two Fs that Governor Rauner is very committed to and that are very important. And that's funding and flexibility. I think earlier this week we saw a strong commitment to education funding. And today I think we're seeing a renewed commitment and a strong commitment to education flexibility, giving districts the tools that they need in order to be able to educate the students as they see fit, as best that they can without unnecessary government rules and regulations. And that's what this is all about. So it's an honor of mine to be able to participate in this program, but more importantly, it's an honor to be able to introduce Governor Rauner. I think he's doing a wonderful job on behalf of our students, on behalf of our schools, and on behalf of our state. Governor Rauner, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And again, good morning, everybody. Today is a very great day for the students of Illinois. Well said by the Senator. This is about more funding and more flexibility. We've got to get the regulations out of the classroom and let our teachers teach. And we need the resources out of the bureaucracy, and we need to put it in the classroom with our teachers and our students. That's what this is really about. We've got to move up off the bottom of state funding for our schools. We need to move up significantly in state support for our school districts so we do not have to overly rely on local property taxes to fund our schools. We need more state support and we need more flexibility so our teachers can do their jobs and they're not constantly restricted and told what to do and what they can and can't do and told how they have to handle the curriculum and the school day for their students. The teachers should be allowed to teach. The principal should be able to work with the teachers and decide what's best for each student. We've got to get the bureaucracy out of the classroom. Let our teachers teach. That's what this is all about today. Today we're announcing one bill. We have more bills coming in the future. This one allows each school to decide for itself how it handles driver's ed, how it handles physical education for each student, and how it handles outside non-instructional contracting for things like janitorial services, maintenance services, transportation services. Let each school district, let each school decide for itself how it wants to handle these issues. Springfield shouldn't be dictating terms. That's all this is. And what we'll find is that each school finds creative ways to save money so they can put that money in the classroom with the students and with the teachers, where it belongs. That's what today's about. This is one step in a long process. On Wednesday, we announced our budget address. We will be fighting hard to make sure we increase state support for education every single year. Even though we didn't get a budget done last year, I fought hard and set a record level of state support for our schools. And I'm insisting this year we go to the 100% of the foundation level for the first time in 7 years. We've been cutting school funding in Illinois for years. Now we're going to go the other way. We're going to be increasing state's funding for schools every year, and this will be the first year in a long time that we've funded 100% of the foundation level. And I'm going to fight hard for that. We're already getting resistance, but we're going to fight hard for that. One of my concerns is the Democratic leaders in the General Assembly have said, well, maybe we don't want to fund any of our schools unless we get changes so Chicago can get a lot more money, because Chicago public schools are in deep financial trouble. And they've said, President Cullerton came out a number of days ago and said he's going to oppose any state funding bill for education for the whole state unless things change so Chicago can get a lot more money. I'm sorry, that is just not right. It's not fair. We're not going to let that happen. We do want to help Chicago. Chicago students deserve to have a great education. Their mayor and their school board has let them down because they've been financially mismanaged for years. They have a massive deficit, but it's not fair to insist the Illinois taxpayers bail out that failure and hold school funding hostage for that bailout. We cannot allow that to happen. And I've offered the mayor to work in good faith to try to deal with that problem, allow them to restructure their finances. We have an investigation going on right now from the State Board of Education to investigate exactly what is their financial trouble, how deep is the hole really, and to come up with some solutions that we can recommend to them so that they can fix their problems. These are problems that have not just occurred in the last year or two. These have been problems that have been building for decades and decades. Financial mismanagement, patronage, too much bureaucracy, misappropriation of funds, not paying into the pensions, just mismanagement, and we've got to fix that. And what I've said to the mayor and others is, if you can't fix it, we will. The state will never take over liabilities from Chicago Public Schools, but we will fix this problem. And that's the discussion that we have right now, and we've got to get it done right so that every child in our state has a great education, all taxpayers are treated fairly, and I want to make sure we protect the teachers in Chicago. Right now, Chicago Public Schools management is saying we might have to fire thousands of teachers. That's not right. That's not what the option should be. We should restructure the debt and the contracts in order to protect every teacher's job. I don't think there's a single teacher who should lose his or her job in Chicago if the financials are handled properly. And that's what we're looking at right now, is trying to investigate that. With that, I think we'll open it up to questions.
Governor, what will you learn for this financial information that you don't have already from CPS?
Oh, there's a tremendous amount. I've heard that some people say, well, this is all available online. No, it's not. There's much of the information we need that's not readily available, and much of what's online is indecipherable. You can't make heads or tails of it. I think that's partly intentional. We need to go deep inside the books, study the cash flows to truly understand what's going on inside CPS.
What's an example of something?
We'll get you every kind of level of detail that you want on that. CPS knows that their books are not clear. And they have come to the state and said, we can't manage our own finances. We need you to send us $500 million, $480 million more. That's not a reasonable request. School districts can't just call up and say, just send more cash. That's wrong. And these problems have been brewing for years and years. This is not a recent development. And I've encouraged the mayor to deal with this problem starting 5 years ago when he first came into office. He has not dealt with the problem. He's attempted to kick the can, not fully fund the pensions, not take on the obligations of the school district, and then he's gone ahead and borrowed even more money. And he's implied that somehow I wanted to hurt his bond offering. I'm sorry, that is not the case. I've been talking to him about bankruptcy for 5 years. There's nothing new about it. If I was interested in blocking the bond offering, the State Board of Education has that ability by law if the state board had found that the school district was in financial difficulty. That is allowed by state law. I've specifically not done that. I'm not trying to hurt bond offerings. What I'm trying to do is deal with the facts and be truthful with the voters and the homeowners, the property tax owners, and the bondholders that Chicago Public Schools is in deep, deep trouble. The problem is not being dealt with honestly, and we've got to start to deal with it.
Governor, what good will this investigation do if the legislature isn't giving you the authority for a state takeover?
I personally believe once the legislature really understands what's going on, they will give us that authority. I believe that is coming and that will happen. Once the facts are known, I believe that they'll give us that authority. There are some lawyers who believe that that the state board does have the authority themselves unilaterally to take over. I'm not sure I agree with them. There may be a legal fight about that. I don't know. I'm not an attorney. But I believe if the facts are truly known, and if Chicago Public Schools continues just to say, send cash, we're out of money, we're going to have to fire thousands of teachers, I think the legislature will say, no, that's not a good scenario. We should have the State Board of Education take over. I believe that's very likely. When I study the math, I don't see anything other than two options. Either massive, massive property tax hikes on the people of Chicago that would be crushing to homeowners and working families and small business owners in Chicago, or bankruptcy. I don't see any other option. What the mayor is trying to position is, hey, there's a third option. Let's borrow a lot more and then let's dump that on the state. No, that will not happen. And specifically in our legislation to step in and take over the public schools if we need to, we prohibit the liabilities from Chicago Public Schools coming on to the state taxpayers. That will be prohibited. Yes.
What regulations are there on non-instructional contracts, and how would this bill relieve those?
So I believe it was former Governor Blagojevich who put this in place. Basically, if a school district would like to contract out some sort of service that's non-teaching, that's maintenance, janitorial, transportation, things like that. Basically, there are restrictions now on what has to get paid and what the benefits are to the employees from these outside companies that contract who provide the service. It restricts what companies can bid to provide the services, and it makes the costs much, much higher than if it was just open, flexible bidding. Chicago was exempted from this rule as a special deal for the city of Chicago. But why does CPS get a special deal when every other school district in the state is treated differently and is forced to spend more money that could go in the classroom? That's not fair, and that's what we're going to change.
Is it just a formality that you're going to take over CPS?
No, as I said, I believe the legislature will review the situation with us, and I think they'll be supportive of it, as I said. Other questions? Yes.
Governor, what called your attention to the tasks/issues at hand?
I'm sorry?
What called your attention to the issues and tasks at hand? Like, what finally caught your attention?
On which issues?
On the issues with trying to take money from the Chicago public schools and just...
Well, I ran for governor to do two things: to have the best schools in America throughout the state, and to have the strongest career opportunities of any state in America. That's why I ran for governor. I've been working on these issues myself as a private citizen for 30 years. I've been a business builder, a job creator in Illinois, many companies in Illinois, and I've been working for teachers in Illinois in their retirement system to try have them have a better retirement. I'm very proud of the performance that we turned in. And I've been working inside Chicago public schools for decades. My wife and I are among the biggest funders of teacher training in Chicago, principal development in Chicago, new school construction in Chicago. We've donated in Chicago to help public schools tremendously. And I've been an advisor both to Mayor Daley, to Mayor Emanuel. I was an advisor. I'm close personal friends with Arnie Duncan when he was head of Chicago Public Schools. I'm a friend of Arnie's and worked with him when he was Secretary of Education for the United States of America under President Obama. Ron Huberman, former CEO of Chicago Public Schools, is a good friend, and I've advised him. I've worked with the CEOs, not all of them, but many of them, Paul Vallis and others, for many years. I'm pretty well aware of the problems inside Chicago Public Schools, although Chicago Public Schools has not been very forthcoming with all financial information. Things are opaque, to use a nice word for it. It's very murky about what liabilities are really there, how much cash is really there, where are reserves, where are rainy day funds. I know that even the teachers union has been frustrated to understand the true financial condition. We've got to get to the bottom line, really get deep on the books so we can come up with true solutions. I have recommended to the mayor for 5 years that bankruptcy be evaluated as an option for Chicago Public Schools. This is not a recent development. This is an ongoing challenge. And I want to emphasize to everybody, there's a perception that bankruptcy means disaster. That means failure. That means disintegration. That means massive layoffs. No, not at all. Bankruptcy done properly purely means contracts and debts can be restructured under court supervision. That's all that means. And in fact, if we did it right, I believe it could help protect the jobs of all the teachers inside CPS.
Governor, on the mandates again, you were talking, but this is just one bill. What is coming down the pike that might deal with classroom instruction, and how do you maintain the standards without having the mandates?
Well, teachers, if we allow them to teach, they know what's good for the students. We should put our confidence in our teachers. I do believe we should have a rigorous, consistent, objective way to measure student growth over the years. I believe we need that. The ISAT failed at that. I'm very concerned about this new park system. I don't know whether it's going to be the right answer. I've got concerns. Some people argue it's a great answer. Some people argue it's a disaster. I don't know. I'm not qualified to really opine, but we're going to study it. But we do need a rigorous, consistent, objective, long-term way to measure student growth over the grades, all the way K to 12. We do need that. And we're going to study what other states have done. Massachusetts is going a certain way, and Massachusetts has had high quality standards for a long time. Park's an option. There's another set of states that's going with another standardized test. What I'm concerned about and what I want to avoid for Illinois in the future is a politicized, manipulated, standardized testing system. We've been there. The ISAT was politicized. The ISAT was dummied down several times over the years to make it look like our students were doing better when they weren't. We can't allow that anymore. We need an objective way to measure whether our students are achieving more and whether they're on track for a career or for college.
But now, what are the restrictions that you want to remove from the instructional mandates?
Well, we can talk about instructional mandates in the future. There's a lot we're going to do to free up the classrooms and to free up the schools. This is one bill, a small step in the direction. I'm a strong believer, let teachers teach. And let each school and each principal control its destiny for its kids in its community in partnership with the parents. I don't like having bureaucracy dictate terms to our schools. And I want every parent to have a choice about its schools, whether they're low income or high income. They should have good options. I'm a passionate believer in choice for parents and schools that are freed up to do things as they see fit for their children without governmental interference. Yes.
I want to ask you about Catholic Charities. They're sending letters to priests telling them to lobby legislators to make sure that we have a budget.
Good.
Do you think it's a good idea? And also
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I'm glad they're doing it. It's unconscionable to me that we don't have a budget. There is no excuse. Speaker Madigan is holding up the entire process. Unilaterally, one person is holding up the process. Many Democrats in the General Assembly have told me in private they'd like to work out a grand compromise. President Cullerton in private, we could have already worked things out. But every time we work out a compromise on an issue, just like this pension bill that he and I agree, I'm going to do his pension bill. Speaker Madigan, crush it, hold it off. One person is holding up progress here. And that one person is trying to force a big tax hike, but he won't support a tax hike unless Republicans vote for the tax hike. This is not right. This is not going to happen. We need either to have a bipartisan compromise with reforms and new revenue. I've said it. I'm an anti-tax guy. I don't like taxes, but I'll be willing to talk about new revenue with reforms. Or I've said, authorize me to make the cuts that we need to live within our revenue. Either one's fine. I'd rather do the first with reforms and new revenue. That's better. That's better for the long term. And then when I say release me to make the cuts, they said, well, you could have done it last year. You could have line item vetoed our bill and we would have been in the same place. They're not being honest about it. That's not true. Our spending already has continuing appropriations and there's spending that's in the law. I can't just line item enough to get a balanced budget. I need them to authorize me to be able to cut enough. They're not being honest with you and others. And I'm glad the Catholic Charities, and I've been a big supporter of many Catholic charities. I'm glad they're getting involved. I wish everybody would get involved. Call the speaker and tell him, either let me make the cuts I need to, and frankly, I think we could restore a lot of what Catholic Charities needs, even with cuts, in my view. Or let's do a grand bargain, stop holding up the process like he's been doing. Let's give people to choose, and I'm glad that everybody should weigh in on this.
Last question. Is there something that you see in the way higher education is run in Illinois that you're not happy with?
Yes. The answer is yes. Look, I'm a huge advocate for all education. I want the best schools in America from age 0 to age 50 with great vocational training and retraining, and I want the best universities in the world here in Illinois. We spend a tremendous amount of money per student in our universities. A tremendous amount of money. We also give a lot of state support to our universities, and that's a good thing. But when I look at the math, the amount of money spent in our universities for overhead, for layers of bureaucracy and junior assistant administrative undersecretaries of stuff, we need to deal with the work rules, the bureaucracy, the payments, the pensions. And I want to create more money, but I want to have an incentive. The schools that shrink the bureaucracy and put the money in the classroom for the scholarships for the kids and for the teachers and pay their teachers more and the bureaucrats less, those universities deserve to get a lot more money. Thanks very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.